All right, good morning, everybody. I've got a little after 9:30 and we are going to get started with our webinar. I want to welcome everybody to MMSA and the Main Street Approach. This is our annual Main Street Approach training that we provide. Typically, we would have held this in conjunction with Destination Downtown in Starkville, but we all know how this year has gone. We were not able to hold that event in Starkville, so we decided to offer this training virtually by webinar. So we are glad that you are joining us today. Quick introduction of our team this morning. My name is Thomas Gregory. I am the state coordinator for the Mississippi Main Street Association, and I'm joined today by my colleagues, Jennifer Prather, who is the Director of Community Development, and Jeannie Zirin, who is the Director of Communication and Marketing for Mississippi Main Street. We are pleased to be with you this morning to talk to you about our organization as well as the Main Street Approach, which is the structure that Main Street uses at a national level to guide and direct local programs. Looking at the list of attendees, it looks like we have a really good mix of both new directors in our communities in Mississippi, as well as some seasoned directors who are, I guess, coming for a little bit of a refresher. Glad to have y'all with us. We also have some board members and then just others interested in learning more about Main Street. So a good mix this morning. Want to invite you all, if you'll notice, you've got the chat feature, so we can get to know each other and we're not sitting in the same room. Introduce yourself quickly via the chat feature. Just tell us who you are and what Main Street program you are with and what role you play, if you're a director or a board member or a volunteer. Take some time this morning just to introduce yourself via the chat feature, if you will. Also, we've got a lot of information to cover this morning. We are going to take some time at the end to answer questions. If we cover a topic and you feel like we didn't address something specific that you would like to, feel free to ask a question in the Q&A section of the webinar. You should see some controls at the bottom of your screen that will allow you to type in a question. Our team will be monitoring those questions, and we will not stop the presentation to answer them, but we will get to them if they don't get answered at the end. It is our goal. We don't know exactly how long it's going to take, but it's our goal to be done by 11:30 this morning to get everybody out and headed to lunch. One quick announcement before we jump into the presentation itself is we want to invite you to join us for the Great American Main Street Award announcement this Friday at 11 a.m. As most of y'all probably know, Downtown Tupelo Main Street Association was announced as a semifinalist for the Great American Main Street Award this year, which is a really big deal. We are pulling for them this Friday, and we want to invite y'all to join us rather to hear the announcement. The National Main Street Center is going to be announcing that via a webinar this Friday. So I think we've got links that we've shared. You can find it online as well. I believe they've made it easier to register. Typically, you had to register for the Past Forward conference, but now you can just sign up through Zoom. And I believe they're also going to be broadcasting it through Facebook Live. So lots of different ways that you can join us for that. But it's a great thing for us to support Tupelo in their quest to become a great American Main Street. All right, let's get into it if we can. Here we go. Here's the agenda for today. I'm gonna start out with a brief introduction of our organization and an overview of Main Street for some of you who may be brand new to the Main Street world. And then we're gonna dig in a little bit to this Main Street approach. This is the model that Main Street organizations use for community and economic development. Then we're going to talk about information specific to local Main Street programs, as well as Mississippi Main Street's role and our responsibilities, both to the National Main Street Center and to our local programs. And then I mentioned earlier that we're going to end with some questions and answers. So by way of introduction, the question that we always get asked is, what is Main Street? And got some photos here that represent kind of this image of what people think of when they hear the word Main Street. It's always this image of kind of a quaint downtown with unique architecture, often bright colors, lots of activity. You can see the cars on the street, which represents, shopping activity. Incidentally, in the top right corner, this is perhaps one of the most famous main streets, probably the most well-known image of a main street. And if I were with y'all in a room today, I would get y'all to try to guess where this is. And if you can look at the very end, kind of that terminating vista, that is Cinderella's castle. So this is Main Street, USA, at Disney's Magic Kingdom. It's interesting that Disney, in their creation of the Magic Kingdom, tried to recreate a traditional American Main Street. And I think they did so quite well. So this is the image of what people think of when they think of Main Street. And most of our historic Main Streets were developed before World War II, in the 20s and the 30s. A lot of our small towns were developed. But I mentioned World War II, and after World War II, we saw the rise of automobile traffic, which led to the decline of pedestrian activity in our downtown. And that sort of created what we know now as suburban developments, these residential areas where houses were put up, connectivity was lost. And that in turn led to the decline of our downtowns, because cities and towns started to develop for the automobile. They put their commercial uses out on the highway to try to capture that automobile traffic. And what resulted was sort of the decline and disinvestment over a period of decades in our downtowns. And our downtowns became blighted areas where people did not want to be, where commerce left, and where sort of attitudes suffered. Who wants to shop in a place that looks like this? And so in response to that, in 1980, there was a group within the National Trust for Historic Preservation that established the National Main Street Center. The headquarters for the National Main Street Center are in Chicago. They sort of rebranded and kind of launched their brand as Main Street America in 2015. Main Street America, or the National Main Street Center, currently has about 42 coordinating programs, of which Mississippi Main Street is one. And there are more than 1,600 local Main Street programs in communities across the United States. Now, the Mississippi Main Street Association, I mentioned, was one of those coordinating programs. The way that the National Main Street Center works is, they're the parent organization, and then they have these coordinating programs, most of which are at the state level, like Mississippi is. There are some urban coordinating programs. Orlando, Florida, for example, has its own coordinating program that coordinates Main Street programs in its various neighborhoods. But Mississippi's Main Street Association was founded in 1984. In fact, we celebrated our 35th anniversary just last year. Our organization was founded by three original statewide partners. That is the Mississippi Development Authority, the Mississippi Department of Archives and History, and the Small Town Center at Mississippi State University. Those three entities really came together in 1984 in a partnership to establish the Mississippi Main Street Association. Our headquarters are located in Jackson, and we've got about 50 Main Street community members across the state. That number does ebb and flow. We invite new communities to be in our membership from time to time, and occasionally we lose community members. That's just the way it goes. But we've got about 50 programs. Our mission statement is very simple. It is our mission to be a catalyst for the preservation and economic revitalization of Mississippi's historic downtowns and districts. We like to think of Main Street as a preservation-based approach to economic and community development, and I think our mission statement very succinctly states that. Now, an expansion on that is our value proposition, and this is a statement that we feel like encapsulates the value that we bring to Mississippi's communities. And it states that Mississippi Main Street provides visionary leadership to Mississippi's most storied places. These are our communities. We foster economic and community development through strategies that promote community engagement, pride of place, and quality design to achieve long-term economic growth. Mississippi Main Street empowers Mississippi's local Main Street leaders to create vibrant places and thriving economies by implementing the Main Street approach: organization, design, promotion, and economic vitality. And it is that Main Street approach that we are going to dig into a little bit later in the presentation. So real quickly, here's our headquarters. We are located at the GM&O Depot building in downtown Jackson. We are right behind the Archives and History Capers building. You can see a photo here in the bottom right of our ribbon cutting ceremony, which we held about this time last year. So very excited to have a presence in downtown Jackson. Our organizational structure is very typical of a nonprofit organization. We are headed by a board of directors, and we've got three kind of director level positions. I introduced ourselves to you earlier, and I'll introduce Beth Rainey to you in a little while. She serves as our administrative assistant, but we've got the state coordinator, the director of communication and marketing, and the director of community development, as well as an administrative assistant. Here we are. So you met the three of us on the left here early this morning when I introduced ourselves to you, and you'll be hearing from Jennifer and Jeannie later in the presentation. They'll be presenting information to you as well. You won't be hearing from Beth Rainey, who's on the right, but she works in our downtown office and sort of serves as our office manager and our kind of control center. She keeps us all in line and organized and keeps things running smoothly. Beth has been an amazing addition to the Main Street team. Our job descriptions, you can kind of see what each position is tasked with. The state coordinator, that's me. I oversee the administration and the advocacy and the development components. Jennifer is in charge of community compliance and providing services to our communities. Jeannie works with public and media relations, organizes all of our training events, and is the primary communication liaison from our organization in the outside world. And then I mentioned Beth. She's over office administration, record and bookkeeping, and 1,000 other things. So here's our board of directors. It's actually a photo there of our ribbon cutting ceremony last year. We have several different classifications of board members. Our at-large members are participants in the private sector. They're eligible to serve as executive officers. We also have 2 representatives on our board that are voted on by our local program directors, our local Main Street directors. We also have 3 members of our board who are considered permanent members. These are the 3 original founding partners, if you'll remember. They each have a permanent member on our board. And then we've got 2 ex officio members. These are folks that have been invited to serve on our board kind of indefinitely based on their years of service to the organization. Quick snapshot of our finances, just by way of letting you know that, our revenue streams are diverse. We do collect dues from our local communities, and those revenues comprise 43% of our revenues. A big chunk, about a third, comes from private investment. These are corporations and businesses in the state that believe in the work that we do and support that financially. We also write and receive grants to help fund work in our communities, and that this is all information from the previous fiscal year, which ended June the 30th, but grants make up a big portion of our revenues. And then program income. These are things like, like fees for events and trainings and that sort of thing that we generate to help offset those related expenses. From an expense side, you can see we've got a general administrative expenses, but about a quarter of our funds go back to our communities in the form of community development. One of the roles we play is to advocate at the statewide level for Main Streets across the state. So we spend a lot of time visiting with our partners and making presentations to groups of people to help Mississippians understand what Main Street is all about and what we do in our communities across the state. We've got expenses related to communication and marketing, as well as training and events, and a small slice of the pie falls into the other category. Our community memberships are tiered. We've got 3 different classifications of community memberships: associate, network, and designated. I'll actually I'll start with the associate community. This is kind of our entry level membership. It's for small communities that are just getting started with a revitalization program, and it may even be an organization that does not plan to commit to running a Main Street program, but they do want to be affiliated with Main Street. They want to have access to some of the membership, perks, some of our training events, stay in the loop. Those dues are $500 a year, and we've got several associate communities and have added several new ones to our membership list just this year. It's a really good way for a community to kind of get their feet wet with Main Street, to start to understand what it is that our organization does and how we assist our communities and what being a Main Street program is about. We encourage all of our community members to consider when the right time is for them to kind of take that next level up. And so network community level is that next level up. And it is what we consider to be a 3-year path to becoming a designated community. The dues are a little bit more, $1,000 a year, but it provides those communities with additional assistance from us. And we work with our network communities to try to help them build local capacity so that they can, within a 3-year period of time, be ready to apply for that designated community status. Our designated community level is our highest level of membership. It provides communities with access to all of the benefits that being a part of Mississippi Main Street has to offer. The biggest thing that comes with being a newly designated community is what we have called in the past our vision plan. This is a strategic plan, a visual strategic plan for a downtown district for newly designated communities that provides a roadmap for a new Main Street program to follow and helps ensure their success. We just, in fact, last week completed a vision plan for the community of Nettleton, Mississippi, which is near Tupelo. They are a newly designated community, and our resource team spent 3 days at the beginning part of last week to help develop that plan for them. The due structure at the designated community level is also tiered, and because of the expenses involved in delivering that vision plan, those dues are escalated in the first 3 years. You can see that the first year it's a $10,000 initial investment, and then it starts to step down. It's $6,000 in the second year and $4,000 in the third year. And then our ongoing dues, so the fourth year and every year thereafter, annual dues are $2,650. That first 3 years of dues for designated communities, you can see that it sums up to $20,000. That is about the cost of being able to provide that vision plan. And so we used those funds to hire the professional services, the consultants that come in and serve on that resource team to develop that plan for the community. It is an amortized fee structure, so you don't have to pay it all at once. We try to help our communities by spreading it out over a 3-year period. And like I said, dues normalize in the fourth year at $2,650. So here's a map that shows Mississippi's Main Street communities. You can see that we've color-coded that by type of membership level. Our designated communities are in red. I think the takeaway here is that we've got communities really all across the state of Mississippi, from the north all the way down to the Mississippi Gulf Coast, from the Delta to the hills, down in Southwest Mississippi. And the map is always changing. So we've got several communities that we're talking with right now who are interested in joining at different levels. It's my anticipation that by this time next year, we'll have at least, one new designated community. So the map constantly changes. If you are a community that is on the webinar this morning, and you're not a Main Street community, but you're interested, I would invite you to please reach out to me. I would love to be able to tell you more about what it means to be a Main Street community and the services that we provide. One of the things that we ask our communities to do, and I know Jennifer's going to talk about this later when she talks about quarterly reporting, but we ask our communities to report their economic investment statistics. So our local programs keep track of this information and report that to us. And at the end of each fiscal year, we are able to kind of pull together a snapshot of the economic activity that has occurred in our Main Street communities over the previous year. So for 2019, Our Main Street communities created 185 net new businesses. We saw 62 business expansions. So those were existing businesses that expanded in some capacity. More than 600 net new jobs. You can see 633 net new jobs in our Main Street districts. 101 facade rehabilitations. And then I think these next two figures really tell the story because of the work that our local programs do in their communities. We saw $56 million worth of public investment in our Main Street districts and $93 million worth of private investment. And this really helps us tell the story of the impact that Main Street has in our communities. All right, so we are going to move into the portion that digs into the Main Street approach. I mentioned earlier that the Main Street approach really is the model that has been developed at the national level for how our local programs work and how they organize themselves. You can see the graphic here is represented by 4 points around the perimeter. This used to be called, I mean, not even all that long ago, it was called the 4-point approach. But the National Main Street Center adapted the model to include these community transformation strategies. And so they renamed the model the Main Street approach. So that's the phrase that we use now. But it's still based on these 4 points. And I'm going to kind of go around the room on this and explain to you these 4 points. And then we're going to dive a little bit deeper to sort of illustrate what these points are about. So you've got organization, which is really about developing the framework for your Main Street program and being able to build that local capacity to make sure that the work gets done. You've got design, which is really the physical assets in your community, the things that you see when you walk down your Main Street, the storefronts, the sidewalks, the physical aspects of your downtown. You've got promotion, which is all about getting the word out about your Main Street program as a destination, both for visitors, yes, but also as a destination for your local residents. We want people to think of your downtown as the center of life in your community, and you have to promote that in order for people to know these things. And then economic vitality is about creating an ecosystem for business creation and entrepreneurship. And then you can see kind of slicing across the middle of this are these community transformation strategies. And that's where we look at a community's unique assets and help develop strategies that are unique to that community. So let's dive in and talk about each one of these points in more detail. We'll provide some examples of that. Organization, as I mentioned, is about building leadership and strong organizational capacity. This is the structure of the Main Street program, the board of directors, the committee, and the task team structure, as well as being able to hire an effective executive director for the program. It's about ensuring broad community engagement. We feel that community engagement is at the heart of every Main Street program of work. In fact, I mentioned Nettleton not too long ago. We spent 3 days in Nettleton engaging the local community, finding out what the community wanted to see for their downtown. It's all about getting people involved and engaging the community in the success of the program. It's also about forging partnerships across sectors. So we know that the work that Main Street does is related to community and economic development, but there's also often other organizations in a community that are focusing on the same or similar goals. So we encourage our Main Street directors to build partnerships with the local municipality, the mayor and the board of aldermen or city council, the county government as well. If there is a chamber of commerce or an economic development foundation or a tourism agency, it is so important for Main Street organizations to kind of cross-pollinate with those organizations and to be in touch regularly with the leaders from those organizations, because we're all working on this together, and those partnerships are so critical to the success of any Main Street program. And then finally, it's about securing adequate resources for the organization. So this is the fundraising side of things. These are planning, those events that bring dollars into your Main Street program. The photo on the right, you can see here's a Main Street director or board member who is holding up a placard that says, "Thank you for buying local." You can probably see the folks in the background are volunteers as well. So here's some local examples of organization strategies. You know, sending the executive director to attend a training event. Those of you who are on the webinar this morning, y'all are participating in a training event that you know, will help build a better local organization. Having a local Main Street awards program to celebrate those successes in your community is an organizational task. Having quarterly community roundtables with those leaders that I mentioned earlier, the city, the county, the chamber, the Economic Development Foundation. We encourage people to just sit down and have a conversation about the things that are going on in your community. You know, what are your issues? What can I do to help? And vice versa. And then having an annual investor campaign or a fundraising event helps bring people to the table and helps bring financial support for those all too important activities in your community. You can see the photo on the right is a group from Starkville celebrating their awards that they won from our statewide Main Street Awards several years ago. You know, this is something that we do at the statewide level to celebrate the successes that happen in our local communities. And it's something that local Main Street programs can do as well to celebrate their own local successes. On the design side of things, it's about creating an inviting and inclusive atmosphere in your downtown. It's celebrating your historic character, your unique architecture, the things that make your downtown unique from a historical standpoint and from an architectural standpoint. It's also about fostering accessible and what we call people-centered public places. You remember at the beginning of the presentation, I talked about what happened in downtowns when the focus shifted from people to automobiles. The downtowns died. And so the revitalization that we have seen in our downtowns has occurred as a result of kind of shifting back to that original mentality under which our downtowns were originally created. And that is focusing on the people that access those public spaces and creating spaces geared towards people and not automobiles. And it's also about enhancing our physical and our visual assets, our historic structures like you see here on the right. This is a photo of the historic, what was once the Hotel Irving in downtown Greenwood, which is now the Alluvian Hotel on Howard Street, which is in the center of Greenwood's Main Street. It's focusing on those historic structures and restoring them to be an important part of your downtown. So here's some examples of design. You know, something as easy as planting flowers and hanging baskets on your downtown light poles, or putting planters on your street and filling them with flowers and color and things that create you know, a sense of place and a vibrant look for your downtown. It's about establishing and overseeing a downtown historic district. One of the things that we promote from a design perspective as an important tool is the Certified Local Government Program, which involves establishing a historic district and a historic preservation commission, which then opens up developers to things like historic tax credits for preservation work. It opens up the Main Street program for certified local government grants and community heritage preservation grants through archives and history. So overseeing the activities within that historic district is an important design criteria. It's all about creating vibrancy amenities. These are things, small, you know, inexpensive amenities that you can add to your downtown to create vibrancy and activity. And that's what this photo on the right shows is, you know, something as simple as a cornhole set, which costs, you know, probably less than $100 worth of lumber and paint, helps create a vibrant activity for people to do in your downtown in an unused space like the corner of a parking lot or, you know, a vacant lot. And then facade grant programs. This is one of those kind of programs that Main Street is sort of known for. Most of our local Main Street programs have a facade grant program, which serves as an incentive for property owners to invest in the fronts of their building, that part of the building which faces the sidewalk or the public realm. And this is just one example of a tool that Main Street programs can use to incentivize good design in downtown. So promotion is all about marketing the district's defining assets, communicating a Main Street program's unique features through storytelling, being able to tell the story of your community in words and pictures, and supporting that buy local experience. We want people in a community to know that they can get the things that they are looking for right here in their downtown. So supporting that buy local experience is an important promotional tool. And what these things do is help position your downtown as the hub of activity in the community. This is a photo on the right of a community festival in Clinton, Mississippi. You can see that they've done a really good job of bringing people into their downtown for this event, presumably on the weekend, with the hopes that people will explore downtown, realize all of the different offerings that the downtown has in place, and so that they'll come back and spend some money, for the things that they need. These are examples of promotion here. You can see, promoting your town's most visited tourist destinations. We do, encourage our Main Street programs to promote their downtown to folks who would come in from the outside and spend money. But also creating a community pride marketing campaign. This is an internal campaign that would encourage local residents to have pride in their community, using the strengths of the downtown as some of those marketing points. The photo on the right is of the downtown farmers market in Greenwood. And this is a new pavilion along Rail Spike Park, right in the downtown. And the farmers market occurs every Saturday during the spring and summer months. And it serves as a destination for locals. You can see how the folks have come out to shop for locally grown produce. Farmers markets are a wonderful tool to bring people into your downtown and to see what your downtown has to offer. And then seasonal festivals and downtown retail events are just things that help generate activity and create that idea that your downtown is the spot, right? The hub of activity in your community. Then finally, economic vitality. This is all about building a diverse economic base. And when I say diverse economic base, it's about creating an economy that has more than just one sector. You don't want all clothing stores or just, just office space. You really got to have a diverse economic base to make your downtown function. It's all about creating diversity in your downtown. It's about catalyzing smart new investment. So creating a system of incentives that brings investment into your downtown area and serving as an ecosystem for entrepreneurship, creating opportunities for people who may have a really good idea, helping them implement that by creating new businesses in your downtown. We always say we want your downtown to be the easiest place to open up a new business. So working with those entrepreneurs to help sort of grease the skids for opening a new business, whether it's helping them with their local entitlement process through zoning, or getting a building permit, or accessing a small business loan to get up and get started. These are things that the local Main Street program can do to create economic vitality in your downtown. You want to be able to provide those economic tools for small businesses. And these are some examples of economic vitality. Work to recruit a variety of business types. I mentioned it's more than just being all insurance sales offices or retail offices. You want to create a variety. Retail is always kind of king in downtown because it creates walking traffic, but you can also create eyes on the street at different times of the day by creating, for example, second-story loft apartments, which introduces a residential use into your downtown, encouraging those office uses like I referenced insurance salespeople or accounting offices to locate on the second stories of your downtown businesses to preserve those first floor spaces for retail activity that generates that walking traffic. Other examples of economic vitality are investing in downtown Wi-Fi. We know, especially in our post-COVID world, or I guess we're currently in the middle of COVID. But people can work from anywhere. And if you've got a co-working space or a coffee shop, there's going to be more remote work opportunities in the future. But in order to do that, you've got to have strong Wi-Fi. So investing in downtown Wi-Fi is something that promotes economic vitality. Establishing a small business incubator program is a great way to incentivize folks to start new businesses in your community. And then, establishing a downtown property tax abatement program. I know several Main Street programs who have done this, worked with their local city council and their county board of supervisors to offer property tax abatements at the local and county level for people who invest in downtown properties. Photo on the right is an example of a partnership in Starkville. This is partnership between the Greater Starkville Development Partnership and the university in establishing shared space in the downtown Starkville area for new businesses, such as a conference room for businesses to meet. So good examples of economic vitality here. And so looking back at this model of the Main Street approach, you can see that we've covered in more detail each of these 4 points. And what we're going to talk about next are the transformation strategies, really, which is kind of the new addition to the Main Street approach. So transformation strategies are generated through meaningful community engagement. We talked about the importance of community engagement, and meaningful community engagement is a process by which you talk to those in the community and help to understand the things that define your downtown. In doing so, you can analyze the district's market position. We always, whenever we provide a resource team or a vision plan for a community, we include an economic profile and a market analysis to help understand the district's trade area, who is shopping in the downtown area, what type of economy exists, because all of those things inform the community's transformation strategy. And these strategies help guide the revitalization program's work. These are things that underpin a Main Street's program of work. It also helps to serve and better, I guess, focus your efforts on serving a particular customer segment, that niche within your consumer base that your Main Street program is most likely to serve. It responds to any underserved market demands or what we call retail leakage. Those are sectors within your market that people locally are leaving your community to spend those dollars elsewhere. If we can identify that retail leakage, we can help tailor a transformation strategy to capitalize on that. And it creates a differentiated destination. So these are the things that help differentiate your Main Street community from other Main Street communities. I'm going to share with y'all a couple of examples here that the National Main Street Center provides as sort of a starting point. The list that they provide of these catalyst strategies, you can find this list on the National Main Street Center's website. The ones that I'm showing here are not even all of them. They call them catalyst strategies. They're sort of out of the box strategies that they've spent the time to think through. And I guess it's those that they feel that kind of apply most broadly. I think it's also important to know that each Main Street program can and should probably have multiple transformation strategies. So it's not necessarily just one of these that applies to your Main Street program. It is likely that you have a primary strategy as well as one or two or even three supporting transformation strategies. So just keep that in mind as we talk through those this morning. You can see the catalyst strategies here that the National Main Street Center has provided. Things like arts and culture, college town obviously is going to have a different approach than a downtown that does not have a major university nearby. Dining and entertainment being a family-friendly destination is a strategy, focusing on health and wellness, or capitalizing on the knowledge economy. If you're a major manufacturing community with major, manufacturing plants or distribution warehouses, obviously that is going to have a major impact on the strategy that you use for your downtown. But also communities that have a high percentage of millennials, and that energy that comes from those younger people in your community is a strategy in and of itself, as well as sports and recreation, and then tourists and tourism. Let's explore. I've got 3 examples that we're going to kind of explore in a little further detail here. The first is dining and entertainment. And y'all can take a look at some of the headlines across the top and see that if your community has focused on dining and entertainment as its catalyst strategy, you're going to be focusing on things people do for fun. Usually in the evenings, it often serves as a regional destination where people come to eat dinner. Your customers are typically younger and more often single and couples, typically not kids, because if you've got young kids, you know how difficult it is to take them to a restaurant or to an entertainment venue. Some special considerations to be made are that dining and entertainment can be complementary to a daytime strategy. So these are things that happen at night. We also need to talk about the things that happen in your downtown during the day. They can be associated with nuisance issues. So you need to be aware of things like noise happening in an entertainment district, or sometimes the problems that are associated with drinking alcohol. It also complements an art strategy. The benefits and the trade-offs, moving down the list, is that it extends the business days into the evenings. That creates additional opportunity for local retailers to stay open potentially a little bit later. Parking demand is complementary to the daytime demand. So those that use your downtown in the day will leave their parking places and go home, and then the dining and entertainment attracts people to use those same parking places at night. So there's shared parking opportunities. And it works well with historic buildings. We've seen time and time again people use historic buildings and architecture for dining and entertainment venues. Example activities are to improve lighting, to increase safety at night. If people are coming into your downtown at night, you want to make them feel safe. So street lighting is very important. You want to engage business owners in responsible hospitality, so that when people come into your downtown, they are welcomed with open arms as visitors to your community. And then, we've seen some really good examples of night markets in our downtowns that create that vibrancy and complement a dining and an entertainment strategy. So manufacturing, I put this one in here because it's so different from the dining and entertainment approach. Manufacturing focuses on small scale manufacturing, which is compatible to commercial districts. It is appropriate for upper floor spaces, warehouses, and other secondary or peripheral spaces. The customers in a manufacturing strategy downtown are sales to other businesses and direct to consumer approaches. Special considerations for manufacturing economies. They can be associated with a local agricultural product, a specialty, or a local ethnicity. Benefits and trade-offs from manufacturing can be a good secondary strategy, especially to make use of difficult spaces. If your downtown has old warehouse spaces or industrial type spaces, this manufacturing strategy can be really helpful in sort of rethinking the use of those spaces and putting them back into service. There's nothing wrong with having light manufacturing in a downtown area. What happens here is that if you do have light manufacturing in a space that has a couple hundred employees, those employees then become customers of the district. So restaurants tend to be more successful during the daytime hours because they can provide lunch to light manufacturing employees. Some example activities that come out of a manufacturing strategy are to activate windows by bringing production to the front of stores. We've seen the sort of introduction of maker spaces in our downtowns, bringing that activity up front to the window where people can see what's being made on the inside and generating that sort of activity in your downtown. And then the last one we'll discuss in detail, and I put this one in here because I feel like it's one that applies to a lot of communities in Mississippi. because main streets are really an important tourist draw. I think Mississippi really is a network of small communities, and people visit our downtowns for tourist purposes. So this strategy addresses people who visit the district from somewhere else, usually to experience something unique to the place, such as history or architecture or arts and culture or shopping. You can see that a tourism strategy complements some of these other strategies like dining and entertainment or arts and culture. The customers tend to be varied and have different profiles. Some are interested in heritage tourism. Some of them are cultural tourists. They come on the weekends. They come in for conventions. They're business travelers, outdoor enthusiasts. The customer here really can be tailored to the type of tourism that you focus on in your community. Special considerations: tourism and tourism related amenities have to exist at all price points, because not everybody has the ability to spend the same amount of money on a meal. You need fine dining, but you also need family dining to provide those different price points. Same with retail. The needs of regional tourists are different from national or international visitors. And I think in the world of COVID that we live in, we've seen that shift in tourism to more day trippers from our own region, people who are packing their family up and maybe driving an hour to a new destination on the weekend, as opposed to getting in a plane and traveling across the country. So that can shift based on trends in tourism. Also, creating a place that locals love. If you do that, if you create a place that your locals love, then the visitors will love it too. I think it's so important to, even in a tourist strategy, to focus your efforts on creating a place that locals like to be. Because if you do that, the visitors will like it too. It really is that simple. The benefits and trade-offs: bring outside consumer spending. It adds to the local buying power. Locals may not be happy about outsiders making it feel less local, but there has to be a balance there. You have to, encourage your locals to welcome and be hospitable to those that are coming into your community to experience it for its destinational draws. Increased tourism can result in higher prices. So these are just things that you need to be aware of. And then some example activities are installing wayfinding signage geared towards those who may be new to your district, helping them find those most visited places. You want to convene regional tourist professionals to share data, which helps further refine that strategy. And you want to set up large format maps in stores and have customers mark where they live. Those are just some examples of ways to capitalize on that tourist strategy. All right, so that has been the Main Street approach, kind of at light speed, but in a little bit more detail than we typically go. A really effective framework for thinking about how to run a Main Street program. So now we're going to talk about local Main Street programs, and we're going to get into kind of the nuts and bolts of how local programs work. I'm going to start by talking about sort of the organizational backbone behind local programs, exploring the board of directors and the executive directors' roles and responsibilities. And then Jennifer's going to finish out this section talking about different organizational structures, as well as ways local programs fund their organization, and how local programs develop an annual plan of work. So when you Google the phrase board of directors, this is what I did. And these are some of the photos that come up that show what a board of directors looks like, right? These are some of the stock photos of a board of directors. You can see very serious business people sitting around a conference room table, very well dressed in glass, lined conference rooms. I love this one. You can see that this board of directors color coordinated their outfits, probably to their organization's brand, by using purple. So this is, a board of directors that you get the image of when you Google that phrase. So I say that because it kind of reinforces this myth that we see that, a board of directors isn't all that important, and that the executive director does all the heavy lifting, that the board of directors, just comes to the meetings, um, um, and that, their role is more advisory than anything. So this is a myth that often gets told in nonprofit organizations, is that the board of directors' responsibility isn't all that important. And the truth of the matter is that a board of directors actually is the backbone of a well-functioning nonprofit organization. They really are the backbone of how it functions. The board is ultimately responsible for the success or failure of the organization, not the director. I think that's an important truth for a board member to hear. Really an important truth for the executive director to hear as well. And then honestly, this is on all of us. We do a really bad job of recruiting board members sometimes. The recruitment process is an important one if you want to attract good board members. We're going to talk about some strategies there. But most boards, as a result of this sort of bad recruitment process, end up being filled with the wrong people. And with an ineffective board, what happens is the executive director ends up getting overworked and burnt out. So one of my favorite business books that I've read and reread is Good to Great by Jim Collins. And in this book, if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it to you. But one of the kind of the key insights that he has, and sort of it serves as the foundation on which the rest of his book is built, is you have to first get the right people on the bus. And then parentheses, it's kind of implied you have to get the wrong people off the bus. And then once you have everybody on the bus and in the right seat, then you figure out where to drive it. And too often in organizations, we get this order of operations reversed. We start driving the bus off, in some direction before we consider who's on the bus and if they're the right fit for the bus. Of course, the bus represents our organizations, and the people are those that are involved. So again, just sort of a reiteration that a position on your board is not intended to be a resume builder for that person. It is not intended to be an honorary position for someone in the community who's done a lot of things in the past. It's not a membership to a social club. It's not just an invitation to come and have lunch once a month. It's not a lifetime achievement award, although we often find people on boards who have done a lot of good work over their lifetime. It's not an honorary position, I guess, is the key takeaway here. It's not an opportunity to see your friends. It's what we like to say in the Main Street world is that a board of directors for a Main Street organization can and should be a working board. These are people that come to work, that come to advocate, that come to serve as an ambassador for your organization and represent your organization to the community at large. You need people on your board who have ideas. And then as the photo on the right shows, now this is what a Main Street board should look like. They're all wearing volunteer shirts because they're probably at their downtown event helping, sell tickets or sell food or hand out information about the program. So it's the shift of thinking that, being on a board of directors is this prestigious thing, and you go and show up for the meetings once a month, and that's all that's required. The flip side of that is for Main Street boards, you really need to show up and be workers, advocates, ambassadors, and idea generators for your local Main Street program. Another quote that I love to use is by Henry Ford. And he said, if you always do what you always did, then you will always get what you always got. And why that's important here is when we talk about recruiting board members, the same process of going to someone and saying, hey, will you be on the Main Street board? We don't really do much. You only have to show up for the meeting once a month. We serve lunch, it's filled with a lot of fun people that you'll enjoy visiting with. The executive director handles most of the work. There's not a lot required. Will you join our board? That approach to recruitment gets you people who show up thinking that that's what's being asked of them. And if you shift that and do something different, and level it up and lay out those expectations of, yes, it's about showing up to the board meeting, but it's about so much more, then you'll start to attract and recruit a higher caliber of people who are going to bring more to your Main Street organization. So at the very basic, when you join a board of directors, yes, you have to attend the board meetings. And the expectation is that each board member will serve on a committee. Each committee is going to need a chairperson. So some of the board members will serve as chairs of a committee. But at the very basic, attend the meeting, serve on a committee. That's kind of baseline. The board's responsibilities also include planning for the organization, setting strategic vision, goals, and objectives, helping the executive director develop the annual work plan, which we're going to discuss in more detail. Creating the policy that governs the organization, the bylaws, any internal policies that relate to personnel, or whatever, but any sort of policy item falls to the board of directors. There's also really important advocacy responsibilities. So publicizing the program's work, serving as an ambassador for the organization when asked to do so, and also helping monitor the program's activities. So taking that work plan and seeing the progress that is being made, hiring and evaluating the executive director, getting the right person on the bus, in this case, is a really important task of the board. And we encourage boards of directors, especially probably at their sort of annual board retreat, to use that as a time to have sort of a formal review of the executive director and let them know the things that they're doing well, the things that they can potentially improve on, so that there's this feedback loop to the executive director that helps them know sort of how they're doing and the things that they need to be doing to be able to live up to the expectations that are set, hopefully clearly, by the board of directors. And then the financial responsibilities are important. So it's the board's responsibility to develop an annual budget, to make sure that the organization's audit is done, that the taxes are paid and filed accordingly. It is the board's responsibility to help the director fundraise for the organization. I say help the director, really the director helps the board. The director can sort of help organize the activities, but the board's responsibility is to help raise money for the organization, something that often gets shoved off to the executive director and swept under the rug, but really is a board responsibility. Some key things for board meetings, just to make use of everybody's time, is to always start the meeting on time. We expect our local Main Street programs to meet at least once a month. Every other month is sometimes acceptable, depending on what all's going on. Sometimes organizations don't meet during December because of the holidays, or during July because of the summer. But meeting on a somewhat regular basis is really important to keep things moving forward. I always encourage the director to send the agenda, the minutes, the financials well in advance of the meeting. Expect that everybody who is on the board to have reviewed those before they walk in the door. So you're not spending, 20 minutes in a board meeting reading the minutes aloud, or, allowing board members to see the financials for the first time. If you send all that stuff in advance, it really should be, are there any questions? Can we move to accept the minutes, accept the financials, and then get into the discussion, which is the most important part of things. Also, I know this is sort of one of those boring things, but in order to run an effective meeting, even though Main Street meetings tend to, be sort of on the casual side, Robert's Rules of Order are very helpful in moving an agenda along. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Do we have discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Next item of business. The committee structure. And I should say that we're going to take a break here in just a second. I know we've been at this for about an hour. So in just a second, we're going to take a 5-minute breather, but let me get through the committee structure, and then we'll take a quick break. So committees are where the work gets done in a Main Street organization. The board meetings, happen once a month or every other month, and that's where some of the big decisions get made and the tasks get allocated. But the committees meet in between the board meetings, and they are where the actual work of the organization should be done. Decisions are made in committee, events get planned in committee, applications for a facade grant get vetted in the committee, not the board meeting. Projects get approved, policies get drafted. They'll eventually be submitted to the board for a final vote. But the hashing out of a bylaws revision, for example, should get written in the organization committee meeting, not in the middle of your board meeting. Membership drives get organized. All of this gets done in committee, ideally, if a Main Street organization is structured well. Our committees, we always recommend that they be organized around the 4 points of the Main Street approach. So having an organization committee, a promotion committee, a design committee, and an economic vitality committee, each of which is chaired by one of your board members. And that board member, who is the chair of the promotion committee, for example, then reports back to the board during the board meeting. So your agenda, at a board meeting would include an executive director's report, but also committee reports. And the committee chair would have an opportunity to report back to the board the things that have been happening in that committee. We encourage all of our organizations to send not just their directors to Main Street trainings, but also we encourage board members, especially those who are chairs of committees, to attend our Main Street training events that relate to their committee. So each year, Mississippi Main Street hosts organization training. We encourage the chair of your Main Street's organization committee to attend that training event. If you're the promotion chair, we encourage you to attend, for example, our marketing training, which is coming up in November. It's important for the Main Street director to attend that, but also, ask your promotion committee chair to attend that as well. So that's a way that you can kind of keep your committee chairs, up to date with their professional development. And then task teams are sort of a subcommittee of a committee for larger projects. So if you've got a big community festival, that takes a Herculean effort to pull off, then that festival may be run by a task team that serves as a subcommittee for the promotion committee, but really is its own separate deal, comprised of a specific group of people that have to come together to get that thing done. If there is a big real estate development project happening in your downtown, then you may decide to form a separate task team just to bring that project online. That brings together the key people that need to make that thing happen. A lot of times we see farmers markets as a program of the Main Street organization, and oftentimes there's a separate little committee or a task team that gathers to make sure that farmers market is a success. So I'm going to show you an example of an organizational chart in just a second to see how that is layered. But before I do that, incidentally, I think it's important to recognize that committees and task teams are really wonderful places to scout out new board members. If you have somebody who's interested in being on the board, but you never really worked with them before, you don't really know, how well they will work for you, if they're one of those that just wants to come for lunch, or if they're really interested in digging in and volunteering, and going above and beyond and being one of those working board members, put them on a committee or a task team and see how they work for a year. If they're showing up to committee meetings with good ideas and bringing a lot of energy to your organization, invite them to be a board member the next time you have spaces available. So a really great way to sort of interview or vet potential board members is through your committees and your task teams. Executive director's responsibility in the organization. So we talked about the board's responsibilities. The executive director, of course, has responsibilities too. And they really fall into two different categories here. You can see that, some of these tasks identify with coordination, and then some are administration. So the coordination side of things is to advocate for and represent the Main Street program. It's the public outreach, letting people know about the organization and how they can get involved. It's project management, the day-to-day tasks that are involved with, hosting an event, doing a historic preservation project, or running a marketing campaign. It's about member recruitment, bringing new people into the fold, marketing your organization, and building those relationships. Those are coordination tasks. And then from an administration standpoint, it's kind of the boring work, the things that don't really get recognized, but are really important to running an effective organization. That is, paying the bills on time, checking the mail regularly, sending out the weekly email newsletter, mailing out the invoices for, investor renewals, calling the meetings and making sure that the board members and the committee members have the minutes and the financials and the things they need and the agenda to come prepared to those meetings, and working with any subcontractors or consultants that you hire, graphic designers to design the poster for your event, for example. So those are sort of the administrative tasks that fall to the executive director. And at times, this is a slide of a plate spinner. At times, being an executive director of a Main Street program may seem like this, where you are running from one thing to the other, trying to keep all the plates spinning at the same time. But it's really fun work. So, I think a lot of times local Main Street programs are able to attract really energetic, effective people because the work is really exciting. And, in the Main Street world, those of you who are directors, that there are no 2 days that are ever the same. Every day you wake up, it is a new challenge that requires a new skill set. And I think those local Main Street programs that are most effective have directors that are really good at kind of adapting to the constantly changing environment in which they work. So here is that organizational chart that I referenced earlier. Our organizations are all headed by a board of directors, and that is regardless of the structure that they're organized under. A board of directors hires an executive director to run the day-to-day operations, but then the committee structure, you can see, reports back to the board. You've got those 4 committees based on the 4 points, and these are examples. Not every Main Street organization needs all of these task teams. These are merely illustrative to show you the types of task teams that can exist under each organization or under each committee. So under the organization committee, for example, you might have a membership task team that is focusing just on recruiting new, business members. You might have a facade grant task team that nestles underneath the design committee, whose job it is to receive facade grant applications and to vet those to, be considered by the design committee. The economic vitality committee may have a real estate task team that's, specifically looking at how to attract new investment in your downtown, development investment. And then the promotion committee, I mentioned, might have a task team for, a larger event or festival. If you are a board member, or I guess an executive director, the National Main Street Center does provide a really good resource for board members that kind of really takes everything that I've talked about and goes much deeper. It's the Main Street Board Members Handbook, you can see here. If you are a designated Main Street program, that means that you are a Main Street America member, because that is one of the requirements. Which means you've paid your National Main Street Center dues. You can and should have a login. If you go to Main Street America's website and click on the How We Can Help drop-down menu and select Resource Center, which you can see highlighted here on your screen, it'll take you to a website that has really just a host of wonderful resources that can help Main Street directors and their boards. So once you get to that page, click on MSA Handbooks and Guides under Digital Libraries. And that's where you'll find that handbook. And so Jennifer is going to take things from here
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. I do notice over the last hour that we've had some new participants join. So if you are new, we have asked that everyone introduce themselves in the chat box. And so if you haven't done so, we would love for you to do that so that we know where you're from and we can be introduced to you and follow up with you as well. So like Thomas said, just jumping right into local program structure. This is kind of very different for everyone because everyone's programs are structured differently. Thomas, if you'll advance the next slide. So the information that I'm going to share for you is based on a survey of the directors that we have in our programs from last year. And you will see that we have, really two highlighted organization structures as far as their tax status. You'll see a 501c6 and a 501c3 are our two main programs, there, as well as government programs, some that fall under cities, and then a 501c4, which is a slightly different version of a 501c3. And I would like to just point out for those of you that are kind of confused and may not know the difference in the C6 and the C3, we can dive into that a little more if you have questions. But the C3 really is designed to be more of a structure for charitable purposes. It's more restrictive in the activities that you can do and carry out and the way that you accept money. But also the C6 is organized typically to promote businesses. So if you think of a typical chamber structure, that's what you're going to experience with most of your C6. Okay. And then here again, another high level view of the way that most of our organizations are structured. Again, you'll see the Main Street Chamber of Commerce, that's your typical 501c6, as well as the standalone program, which is typically going to be a 501c3. The other ways that our programs are structured are a partnership entity, which might include, for instance, tourism, chamber, and Main Street. And then local government. Many of our programs are housed under city government. That is not abnormal and it is also not required. So there's no structure as to how we require for our organizations to be structured, but we do ask that you have a very clear administrative path for how your program is going to be run. Thomas talked a little bit about that when he talked about, keeping regular board meetings and having minutes and having an administrative board. And so you can see that that really does kind of run the gamut on how people's programs are structured. And many times that comes down to either capacity for a local organization where they can get the most, support administratively, and then also funding of how they're going to fund their local programs. And then, is your program located in a National Register Historic District? This and the next slide, Thomas, I'll let you kind of stay on this one for a second and then go to the next one, has to do with historic preservation. Obviously, Main Street is a community development, economic development based organization that is centered in historic preservation. So, what the National Register of Historic Places is managed under the National Park Service. And it basically is, if you are a National Register Historic District, it is a group of buildings that are registered together, that are marked as intended to preserve their character. With National Register Historic District comes different technical services and grants from the Mississippi Department of Archives and History. And then they keep an active database of buildings and districts in our state that are, visually and historically intended to be preserved. In addition to that, like I said, we would talk about the certified local government. They are two different things, but they do work hand in hand. Certified local government plays a little bit deeper into a community's ability to kind of manage their historic preservation on their own front. It takes a commitment from the city and the Main Street organization to have an investment in their own program, to have a national historic preservation ordinance, to have a board that really oversees the changes to these districts and these buildings. But the really interesting thing about being a community that is committed to preservation and that has gone through the task to become certified local government, as well as having your district registered or even individual properties, is that the rehab projects, are eligible for federal and historic tax credits. There are certain regulations to projects that that are able to apply for federal and historic tax credits, 20% for federal and 25 for the state. It does have to be a structure that is, listed on the National Register, but additionally, it has to be a project that is going to be used for some sort of profit income, not an owner occupied home or building, but a restoration of a building that will generate revenue after its rehabilitation. So moving on. And here you'll see certified local government status is obtained by about 60% of our local communities. It does not mean that there's anything wrong if you don't have certified local government status. It does just open your community up to different funding options, a little bit more diverse base of grants and funding and technical services. But again, it does take a very heavy commitment on the community's part to, be preservation based and oriented as far as having preservation ordinances, and also a team that's willing to, really hold and sustain that vision for the community. And then here you'll see Thomas talked about the National Main Street Center. We do have programs under Mississippi Main Street that are accredited members of National Main Street, as well as an affiliate member. If you look at what an accredited member is, that really is that top tier of Main Street members that this community has really demonstrated a commitment to this comprehensive approach to community development and revitalization. So, they're following the guidelines that not only Mississippi Main Street sets for our programs to be accredited, which we'll talk about later, but also basically the national standard. They're collecting data and as well as the National Main Street that really solidifies the work that we do in our downtowns. And what I feel like is really special about this is, we talk about this impact of the network that you gain when you're part of Mississippi Main Street. And accredited members of National Main Street represent over 800 communities across the nation. And so for 86% of our communities to be accredited really shows the weight of the importance that our communities put on preservation. And so the 14% that's affiliate is still growing their capacity to meet all of the requirements that are made for accreditation. And then here you'll just have, again, another look at budgets across the spectrum for our communities. Annual revenues average about $141,000, and the median is about 105. So you can see that we have programs that have all sizes of staff, all sizes of salaries that they pay their directors, as well as revenues. And then the local government percentage. We do find that our strongest programs are supported in some way or another by their municipality. So you'll see that we surveyed our directors, and the average is about 46% of the budget coming from their local municipalities, and the median is about 41. So as for the local program director, just like our program structures, they kind of are all over the board. So is our local program directors. I always kind of laugh at this slide because, most of our directors are full-time, and then a small section of them, 14%, are part-time. But my guess is if you ask those directors that were part-time, if they felt like they were part-time or full-time, they would probably tell you full-time. That really is kind of based on, again, the way the program has a local capacity to hire a director. Oftentimes, whether it be part-time or full-time, is based on the ability to offer a solid salary to have someone in the office, 40 hours a week. Many times it works for a local program to have a part-time director because it may be a shared use agreement with another department or organization within the community. And so it kind of just depends on the capacity for your community. And one of the things that we do when we're working with new communities and even existing communities is we come in and we help them determine the best fit for their organization, whether it to hire a full-time director or a part-time director, and determine the capacity to pay the salary to that director. And as you'll see on the next slide, looking at the annual salary, the average is about 41,000, and the median is, the median is about 41,000. We have directors, some that are in the mid 20s all the way up into the higher 70 and 80s, and that's strictly, again, because of the structure of their programs. Many of them carry dual roles that might be a city role and Main Street, and then others have a very much a part-time position, which is why you see such a difference in salaries within our directors. And then also, Thomas talked a little bit about this in the organizational structure, but due to different organizational structures and different capacities that our directors fill, whether it be for a city entity or for a government or for 501c3, you'll see that many of them report to different people. The majority of our directors are going to report to a board of directors, and that mainly is due to our structure with our memorandum of agreement between our communities that they have a board that stays on its own and that meets regularly. But oftentimes you'll see that they also report to the mayor and the president of the board. The president of the board would fall in line with the board of directors, but the reason you see many of them that report to the mayor is due to the fact that a bulk of some of our programs funding come from the municipality itself. So, just as an overview, Thomas talked a little bit about this, but to me, this puts it into really good perspective the way the organization works. Thomas, if you kind of want to just click through it. Our organization works with the direction under an executive director, but you'll see that it's so important that they have the support of the board of directors, MMSA, through the services that we offer, the Main Street America, that being whether they're affiliate or accredited. The resources that come from those two organizations alone are phenomenal. Thomas talked a little bit about that when he talked about the toolkit that's on the national website, different things like the point. We talk over and over again about that network. Just like I mentioned, the over 800 communities that are nationally accredited, that is a network and a resource that is invaluable to a director in a program. And then also the city and county. Again, I can't reiterate enough. The programs that we see that are most successful have a buy in and a strong relationship of support from their municipality. And then the executive director action is carried out through task forces, staff, board of directors, and community. Thomas also talked a lot about that when he talked about how a board of directors is not just a sitting board. It truly is a working board. It's the hands and feet of Main Street, and they could not function without that. There is no way alone that a Main Street director could do all that it takes to carry out the process of Main Street. And so that is why those task forces and an active board of directors is so important. So work plans, I think, I'm going to speak very individually about this because I actually have been a local director myself. About a year ago, I joined Mississippi Main Street. Prior to that, I was the director in Starkville, Mississippi. And so I want to talk about work plans, and I want to talk about why we develop work plans and how work plans are developed. And the reason I think it's very important to spend some time on this is because everyone's going to develop their work plans differently. What my mind reads well and maintains well may not suit someone else who might be very spreadsheet driven and very visionary driven as far as objectives and goals and who's going to carry it out. It may be very simplistic, and that's okay. But what we want everybody to keep in mind as you form your work plans is that you have clear objectives of what you wish to carry out over the next year, the next 2 years, the next 5 years. And the reason we put them into work plans is because we're constantly reviewing them to make sure that they apply to the mission of our organization, because it gives us a framework that if it doesn't play into our mission, that we just don't do it. And so work plans not only lay out your clear objectives, they organize your activities and tasks, which makes it so much easier for a director to ask for help and to delegate help. Because what good are task forces and committees if you don't give them roles to play, you don't give them work to do? So again, task organized by committee and task force, and it gives you the ability to prioritize your timelines. Some things are low hanging fruit and they can be done in 6 months to a year, and other things are long-term goals, but those short-term goals are constantly leading up to that vision of that long-term goal. So again, why work plans? We sort of went over this. It keeps your organization focused. Just being very candid, oftentimes Main Street becomes the the hub of where people go to get things done with ideas that they have, and it's because Main Street is primarily known for yielding results. And so oftentimes people will come and say, we have this great idea, we want to do this. And it's oftentimes hard to juggle projects that people want to do or ideas that we have, but having solid work plans will allow you to not only say yes or no, but it allows you to prioritize it in the scope of your vision and what your mission is. It helps you in budget planning because as you begin to prioritize those projects, you can actually assign budget items to them. If you have a project that you don't have the budget for, that might go on the longer term goal that then you identify a funding source for. And then it gives you something to work for and it shows you where you've been. I think it's vital that if we're going to draw up work plans and we're going to use them, that we use them kind of like a grading system, that we sit down at our board meetings and we keep them in the front of the binder every time you have a board meeting, and you check things off as you go. You look at what each committee has offered to do and signed up to do, and you have a report of where you're at every time you're together. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to sort of show several different work plans and implementation strategies. And you'll start to see what I mean by what works for one director may not work for the next director. So this is a strategy that was implemented in Starkville when we had our visioning session. And it's going to be very broad because we really were starting from the scratch. So you see that we've listed first steps, which I would consider the low-hanging fruit, the things that you could do right away that you want to get done, and then long-term goals and the vision that's associated with all of those. What do you want out of the work that you're doing? Work without vision really isn't taking you anywhere. So you'll see that the first vision, that setting the stage and for policy and strategy that Starkville wanted, was to protect its unique design and planning attributes while streamlining the development process. So Starkville was very lucky that the city really cohesively participated with them in their vision session. And so they identified a need to work on their planning and their zoning ordinances, their overlay district, so that they could adopt historic guidelines and they could adopt a cohesive set of ordinances that would make their district visually look the way that they wanted to look. That plays right into the design that proportion of Mississippi Main Street and our approach, because it's all about how you present yourself and how you look as an organization. So you'll see the first step was to create those ordinances. And then the long-term goals were to form these local preservation districts and to have a design review process. Those are long-term goals because oftentimes they brought with some community input and education. Many times you do have to have some political will behind design review ordinances and local preservation districts. And so you never want to just jump into that and think that it's going to happen super fast. It's very important to get community input and community engagement and have a very strong educational component to those processes. So without going through this whole work plan, you'll see that that is one version, basically the goal and then the steps that you're going to take to that goal. And it kind of keeps you on track. So the next one. This is another community's work plan, if you will. You see that they're not, this one is not as short-term and long-term vision oriented. However, it's very task oriented. So they've identified the task, the details of how the task will be done. They've assigned it to someone who's going to work on it, being one of the task forces, economic revitalization, whether it be the organizational staff or even the executive director. They've assigned a budget to it. And you see the first one that they have, the budget is zero. That may mean that it's not going to cost them anything, or it may mean that they need to go out and raise funding for that project because they don't have it at the time. And then their goal of when they want to have that completed. This is a great example of a checklist that can be kept in every board member's meeting folder, where they can actually talk about the progress that they've made on each of these points as they meet monthly. And the next one. So this one that I threw in, I'm going to just be very honest, was the first one that I did as a director. So we had a brand new board and I was a brand new director, had never done a work plan before. And my mind is not a spreadsheet oriented mind. And so I talk to directors like that a lot. They see these spreadsheets and their minds are just blown. It's okay to have simplified work plans. Everyone's work plans are different, but it is all about having your objectives clearly stated for where you want your organization to go and how you're going to carry them out. So I took on as director, and the work plans I think were due like the following month. And so I had to sit down and prioritize simply what we were going to do over the next 1 to 2 years. And so I just took it by the 4 points: organization, promotion, design, and economic vitality. And then I very clearly stated the things that we wanted to achieve under each of those 4 points. Now, this was a starting point. This was the way for us to put our objectives on paper, and then it evolved later into more of what you saw from those first slides. But I felt it important to see this because I wanted our directors and our new board members to understand that simplified work plans are okay as long as it works for your organization. Next. So how to make work plans. We basically have talked about that. You need to make a clear list of things that you want. I personally feel like it works best to separate it into the 4 point approach: organization, design, promotion, and economic vitality. And then to list your objectives of what you as an organization want to achieve under those 4 points. And when I say what you want to achieve, I mean maybe tomorrow. You might want to plant some flowers in the front of your door tomorrow because you need to beautify your storefront. Or long term, we want to change our streetscape on Main Street. It's okay to put those same goals onto the paper because oftentimes when the small things start, the momentum is what carries you into the big goals. And it's okay if the objectives that you want to achieve may not be achieved by your organization. One of the things in ours, Thomas, if you'll flip back to that last slide, I kind of would like to point this out. If you look under economic vitality, the financial incentives for the facade grants, the let's see. Okay, the business recruitment where it says develop an incubator and entrepreneurship space. That is a goal that we had for Main Street, but because of the momentum that our Main Street and our downtown was experiencing, that goal was actually carried out and achieved by Mississippi State University and their e-center. They developed an idea shop and a co-working space, like Thomas kind of reiterated in the last slide. And so because of all the factors of Main Street playing together, there was this outside contribution that checked off one of our goals and objectives. So keep in mind that sometimes your goals and objectives will just work out themselves, and it may not necessarily be the work of the Main Street Association. So it's always vital to identify your partners and identify how to achieve those goals, even if you can't do it internally. So prioritize based on capacity and budget. We've talked about that. And assign projects to committees. I cannot tell you how important this is for 2 reasons. One, because the executive director cannot do everything alone. If we have executive directors trying to do all the work on their own, and granted, executive directors are bad about that. It takes a certain skill set to do Main Street, and oftentimes we're the type that just dig in and do it because we know we can do it and we know we can do it well. But delegating is a learned trait, and it is one that will make your job so much easier. I had to learn that. And also, you have these board members and committee members. They don't want to just sit with nothing to do. If you ask them to be involved, and we're going to ask them to be actively engaged, we need to make them feel like they're an active part of this association. So assign the projects. I think it's best to have a task force or committee that has a committee chair. Oftentimes that's a natural fit with someone on your board that can arrange meetings with these committees and report back at the board meetings. I would suggest that the committees don't necessarily need to be all board members. They need to be led by a board member so that there is that connection to the actual association and the administration. But forming committees of people who are not on the board are great ways to begin to build potential board members down the road. And then again, I've said this over and over. Use your work plans as a checklist at your board meetings. Allow your committees to report what they're doing and how they're doing it, and look and see where you're at as the year goes on. It will help you stay on track, and it will help you be focused on your vision. MMSA's roles and responsibilities. I think, Thomas, this pops back to you.
That it does. So I'll join back real quickly to kind of go over this slide, and then I'm actually going to hand it right back to Jennifer to dig into further detail. And Jeannie's going to join us in a second too to talk about some things as well. So this is just a quick slide that summarizes all of the responsibilities that the Mississippi Main Street Association has really in our role as a statewide coordinating program. So one of the things that that we, just like our association asks local programs to sign what we call a memorandum of agreement, which is the formal agreement between Mississippi Main Street and a local Main Street program. Mississippi Main Street has an agreement with the National Main Street Center, and we agree as a state coordinating program to coordinate activities related to compliance for the National Main Street Center. So the National Main Street Center does not have the capacity, it cannot coordinate compliance efforts with all 1,600 local Main Street programs. And so that's why they employ that kind of hierarchy of organization. And so we, as a statewide coordinating program, serve in that role. We are sort of kind of an arm of the National Main Street Center, helping to ensure that our local programs are meeting the compliance and the accreditation standards that national sets. So we do that through, as I mentioned, a memorandum of agreement. This is a formal document that we ask the director and the board president of each of our local programs to sign each year. In fact, we will send those out in January for 2021. And the things that we ask our local programs to do, kind of at a baseline, are to employ a Main Street director. We mentioned some are full-time, some are part-time. We ask that local programs, if they have a part-time director, to make sure that part-time person is working at least 20 hours per week on Main Street work. Sometimes, Jennifer mentioned, those Main Street directors are sort of in a shared use agreement. Maybe they're part-time Main Street, part-time chamber, or part-time, city official. To be effective, the Main Street director needs to be spending at least 20 hours per week doing the work of Main Street. And in most cases, it is a full-time job. If you're doing your job well, you're going to be spending 40 hours a week doing all the things that it takes for a Main Street program to be successful. All of our local programs have to have an active board of directors that are meeting on a regular basis. We spell out in the memorandum of agreement that board should meet at least once every other month at a minimum. Most of our boards are meeting every month. There is the annual dues payment that's made to both the state organization and the national organization. That is a requirement. We ask all of our local program directors to fill out an annual survey. So a lot of the statistics that Jennifer shared with y'all that show, the local organizational structure and the local director's salary and who they report to and that sort of thing, that's information that comes directly from that director's survey. And we sent out next year's survey has already been sent to the directors. And so that's something that we require all of our local directors to participate in each year. And that really helps us as a state coordinating program staff to kind of keep our finger on the pulse of what's going on in local communities. There are some questions that relate to the things that your community is in need of, things that our organization is doing well, things that we need to improve on. It is kind of that annual feedback loop that we use to help assess all of our local programs and really to help identify those areas that a local program may need some assistance with. I know Jennifer specifically uses a lot of the feedback that comes through that survey to reach out to local programs who may be in need of some specific help. So, I guess what I would want our local program directors who are on the webinar this morning to know is that we do read that survey. We review all of the comments that come in, and we tailor our work and our assistance to our local programs based on the feedback that we get from that survey. We do have training requirements for all of our local programs. In a typical year, that would include attending the director's retreat, which we hold every year. Jeannie's going to go into specifics about the opportunities for training for next year a little bit later. But we do have a set of training requirements that we expect our local Main Street directors or board members to attend. on behalf of the organization. And the reason for that is because we just know how important professional development is. And I think anybody, you know, present company included, who says that, oh, I know everything, I don't need to learn anything else, is not being honest. There's always something new to learn, new information to glean. Every time, you know, I've attended a webinar or a training event, you know, always come out with at least one or two things or new ideas to implement in the Main Street program. So it is our goal as a statewide coordinating program in our training events to provide y'all and to provide local programs with much needed professional development and you know, to share ideas about things that you can do in your community. Jennifer's going to talk about this in a second, but quarterly reporting, just briefly, is the way that we collect and communicate those statewide economic investment statistics. It's also an important tool for local programs to be able to communicate your value to you know, your local mayor and board of aldermen. I know a lot of times, you know, sometimes local programs get questioned, like, what are you doing in your community? Through our quarterly reporting, you're able to call up those statistics that show the impact that you are having on your local economy. And then I mentioned, you know, membership with the National Main Street Center as a requirement for compliance with our designated communities. So passing it off to Jennifer to pick up and carry the ball forward.
Thank you, Thomas. Thomas, that was like a great lead into what we're going to talk about, because I think this is probably the bulk of what the importance is for our organization. I know as directors and board members, this is what you find most important, because it really is about return on investment with what you get from your membership with Mississippi Main Street. That's important to you guys, that's important to us, and it's important to the communities that you support as well. So as the community development director, community services is my responsibility. If you have had any familiarity with our program in the past, it was known as technical services, the work that we as an organization are able to come in and do to support your local organization. So you'll see that we allocate our community services a little bit different this year. We have our normal program services, which are things that I can offer as an individual, sort of as a consultant basis, and that our team can offer as well. The Main Street 101, which is what you're on right now, is something that, as part of our memorandum of agreement, we offer two programs once a year if needed. We will not only offer it on a formal basis like we're doing now, but I can actually come into the community and do it individually. If you hire a new director or you have a new board, it's very important for us for you to understand the value of Main Street. And part of that is us being clear on that through the Main Street 101. So Main Street 101 board development training, oftentimes this is when a new board is seated, and you have a lot of people who just need to really understand what Main Street is and how they function. As you can imagine, it is a lot of the same as Main Street 101, but we do dive a little bit deeper into what the board's responsibility is. And then services based on communities' requests. Oftentimes we or I get requests through our reporting and through our services agreement to come help train or support an organization on social media management. Obviously, I'm not a website designer, but if an organization is having issues with a website, if I can't do the work myself, it's very incumbent on me to find someone to help our organizations partner with, that can teach them, that can train them, that can develop skill sets that they need to be successful. Oftentimes this is, you know, a community, for example, who may be struggling with some preservation initiatives or struggling with how to diversify funding mechanisms to do rehabilitations in their community. And we as an organization can leverage our resources and our assets and partnerships to better serve the needs of our local communities. In addition to that, other than the services that we can offer as a staff and that I can offer as the community development director, we have an allocation of community development grants that we distribute once a year. We as a staff decided that the best way to monitor the progress of our communities and monitor the investment that's put into our communities is to use our community service funds to fund these grants. And basically, it is an annual matching program that incentivizes and encourages development in our downtowns. It seeds funding that our communities need to do the work that they need to do to be successful. Just as a real high level overview, we had about $18,000 to distribute this year, a little bit more than last year, which is great. And we had 20 applications this year and 12 last year. So we're seeing the interest in that grow from among our community organizations, which is wonderful. And to put this into perspective and to offer you the impact of what these funds enable, we had a project request total. The actual projects being done was $720,000. So that is our organizations doing investments in their community worth over $500,000. And that is just phenomenal. We were able to allocate about 18,000 of the 42 that was requested, and that's strictly based on budget restrictions on our part. But what I want you to keep in mind is think about the amount of work that our organizations are doing and the amount of money that they're investing, and how we as an organization can leverage to grow those funds so that we can give even more. And I want to lead into that because as we talk about quarterly reporting, which we'll talk about next, I want you to understand the impact of why we do these quarterly reportings and why it's important for us to show our value. So, into quarterly reporting, this is a system that we use through our website to collect information that pertains to each local program's area of work, implementing the 4-point approach. So, the kind of information and statistics that it quantifies is the number of new business openings, the number of closings, job creation, public dollars invested, whether that be your municipality's contribution or a grant that you've received from the government, private dollars invested, local memberships from retailers and merchants, and sponsorships that you've sold where local businesses are investing in your program, residential unit inventory, public improvement projects that can run the gamut of developing a green space in your downtown or a streetscape improvement, or just something as simple as your city helping you invest in redesigning and implementing your crosswalks in your downtown. New construction projects, the federal, state historic tax credit projects, and the volunteer hours. And so it's very important for us to demonstrate the importance of why we do this, because I'm going to be real honest, as a director, it's probably one of the things that they hate to do the most. And it seems kind of like this gnashing of teeth, because it is at times difficult to pull these figures and statistics. However, it's such a strong tool to demonstrate the impact that your local program and that the statewide program is making on economic development. This is proving success of Main Street as an economic development tool. Oftentimes we forget that economic development is not just about the industry in the industrial park that's bringing 2,000 jobs to our community. Economic development is brick and mortar opening that's employing 8 people here, 2 people there, 6 people here. And I wish I had prepared a little better, because during COVID, we had a board meeting, and I was checking quarterly reports, and I was able to share with our board that even during COVID, when we thought that people were going to be shutting down left and right, Main Street associations across the state were still showing over 100 businesses opening and hundreds of jobs created. And that is the power of Main Street as an economic development tool. And so in talking about our funding, it's important for us to quantify those amounts. And it's important for you, because I don't know how many of you are watching that have ever had to fear that you're going to lose your funding from a supporter, an investor, or your city. But when you have these statistics to go pull and say, this is the impact that we've made, those are the kind of things that are going to leverage your worth in your communities and for us across the state. So just real quickly, I'm not going to get into how to do the reporting, but Thomas, if you'll go to the next slide, the director's portal is located on our website. If you'll scroll to the very bottom on the left-hand side, you'll click on the director's login, and then that will take you to the next one. And this is what our director's portal looks like. So inside the director's portal, excuse me, guys, you'll find resources for directors. Many of those are similar to what Thomas pointed out under National Main Street, tools and resources, presentations that we've had in the past, presentations like this, something that you might need to see on board development, grant opportunities. This is where you would not only find our community development grant opportunities, but any resource that we can gather that we can provide to you, whether that be through the National Main Street Center, the certified local government, small municipalities, anything that we can get for you to to put at your fingertips, we're going to put under this director's portal. And then, of course, the quarterly reporting. So once you log in and you click on quarterly reporting, this is what your screen is going to look like. And again, at Director's Retreat, I'll be able to go through a more in-depth training, as well as I can offer training individually to anyone at any time that wants to know how to better do a report. But I wanted to point out several different things on this page. So I've circled add quarterly reports because this is where you as a director or a board president is going to actually go in to put all of those statistics that we talked about. But if you look right to the left of that, it says generate dynamic reports. And this is even more important than adding the quarterly reports quarterly, because this is about the why we do this. I talked about how this report generator serves as a tool for you to archive all of the information that you collect so that if you ever need it at your fingertips, it is right here. So as a director, if you sit down and you're irritated about having to do quarterly reporting, and I can say that because I've had to do it, and it's just that one thing that you have to do every quarter that you hate to do, think of it as, what if the mayor's office calls and says, hey, we're needing to cut some funding and we're thinking about cutting Main Street. Can you get me a report or a request for funding in 24 hours? Guess what? Then you don't have to stress because it's all right here. And so if you'll go to the next slide. I have generated a report and I went ahead and used Startville because I felt like I entered these. So if anything's wrong, I'll take the blame for it. But this is what a dynamic report looks like. And so I believe what I did is I don't think it says on here, I wanted to run statistics that have been entered from 2015 to 2020. And so if you look at this report, you'll see Startville and it has its population, which we know will have to be updated soon. Inception year as a Main Street organization, the number of new businesses that were reported over that 5-year period, business expansions, new jobs net, public dollars invested, and private dollars invested. Look at those numbers, y'all. The numbers speak for themselves. Downtown residential units, and then you'll see the other things there. But this is just a small snapshot of how you can use that quarterly reporting as a tool that can really help you leverage yourself as an asset to your community and across the state. Okay, moving on. That's kind of how the local program functions. And now we're going to backtrack just a little bit. This is really going to be more geared towards how we develop new organizations, new communities that come on as Main Street members. But then it also may be for communities who need a refresh. They need a new plan because they've accomplished all their work plans and now they need a new roadmap. So as Thomas mentioned before, when a new program comes on, we come in with a resource team. Historically, they've been called vision teams, they've been called charrettes, but what the resource team is, it's a team of professionals that comes in and engages your community to develop a roadmap that is specific to you and what you have as a vision for success and development and preservation. So the resource teams are going to be made up of market assessment, community input, branding and marketing, planning and design, and implementation strategies. So moving on to the first, market community input. Any process to plan a roadmap for a community is worthless without community input. It's like coming into a new job and not finding anything out about the organization or anything out about what has been done, what should be done, what works and what doesn't work, because you don't know anything. And then you make changes and you have to go backwards. So here you have a couple of images. Brandon Presley, who's commissioner, is a Nettleton resident. And so this is a picture of us in Nettleton touring their community, letting them tell us the assets and the struggles in their community and what is important things for us to know. And then the top picture is actually a community input session where we invite everyone to come in for a town hall meeting and we find out what they love and don't love and what the good, the bad, and the ugly is about their community so that we can begin to formulate a plan that benefits them. Market analysis. So part of our resource team, we will bring in an economist. Oftentimes that is someone with MDA or someone with extension, such as Rachel Carter, who is an economist who has the ability to dive into numbers. This is just a small snapshot of the numbers that would be looked at, your population, your demographics, your trade area, market, whether, you pull from just your community or you pull from 5 or 10 miles outside of your community. It even digs into looking at where your community shops, when they shop, how they like to shop. Do they shop online? Do they drive to the next town to shop? And then leakage. What are they buying in your town? Are they leaving town to go buy something else? So what that does is allows a community to look at what they have and figure out what they're missing. And so market analysis gets way more in depth than I can get here, but that is an active part of the resource team experience. And marketing and branding. So as you'll see, Starkville is known as Mississippi's College Town. All of that came out of the marketing and branding initiatives as a part of the resource team. How you promote your community. How do you feel about your community? How do you want others to feel about your community? What are you creating as a way for people to say, that's where I want to be? So branding is super important. Consistency in branding is important. And so this is one of those things that once the resource team makes their recommendations, our team can then come in and help teach someone how to develop this. So as an example, you'll see here, Starkville has a very strong logo, Mississippi's College Town. And if you notice, everything looks very similar. So the ad that runs in the paper, the strip ad at the bottom, and then the cover photo for Facebook at the top, as well as a share graphic, all has similar branding, strong characteristics that as soon as someone looks at that piece, they know that it's Starkville. And I don't know about y'all, but kind of looks like a place I'd want to be. So that's the initiative in branding, that you're creating an image that makes your destination, your community, a place that people want to be interested in. Planning and design. This is the pretty stuff. This is the fun stuff. We have so many professional designers that are so talented that can come in and look at, if you look at the pictures on the left, what many of us see in our communities, blighted buildings, buildings that are beyond repair, streets that just look like a conglomerate of years of signs going up and poles up and different things. But then they can produce this vision of how they see your community can be. And so part of the resource team process is planning and design recommendations and how to implement those incrementally to make your community not only have a strong sense of place, but also be friendly for people who want to move around there. And then Thomas talked a little bit about implementation strategies. So all of the work that we've talked about, all of the planning that we've mentioned that the resource team comes and does is for nothing without implementation strategies. How are you going to get from point A to point B? How are you going to get from that blighted building to that beautiful restored facade? And again, it takes community vision and input. Part of having stakeholder groups and community input is that people hear from each other and they realize that they're more alike in their vision for their communities than they realize. Market understanding through market analysis, and then looking at what the community has as assets and coming up with a transformation strategy of how you can get to not only where you want to be visually, but outcomes that are quantitative and qualitative that can be measured of success. And so here's just a quick example of how you can implement different transformation strategies. So say we wanted to use the arts as a transformation strategy. An example of how you would do that, if you see on the left, we have our 4 points, and that's how we work. So a design transformation strategy might be to implement a mural project in your town. Organization might be to form an artist advisory committee. That committee might oversee that mural project. And the way you might promote that mural project would be to organize an event that is a spring arts walk that gets people to move around your town and not only see the murals, but also drive commerce into areas of your community. And the economic vitality is that the culture that you're expanding of art in your community may very well eventually lead to development of an art gallery or a live and work studio. And so that is how a community may focus on saying, we have a strong arts culture. How can we use that to implement transformation strategies in our community? And then last but not least, all the work that you're doing as an organization, we as Mississippi Main Street, under the premise of the National Main Street Standards, will hold program evaluations. We are sort of in the process of revamping that and developing that right now. But the things that we look at are what National considers standards of performance. These are the things that National considers when they decide whether someone is an affiliate or an accredited program. They want to see that you have broad-based community support, both public and private. Again, do you have comprehensive community engagement from your organization, your volunteers, your nonprofits, and your municipality? Do you have a clear vision and mission statement that's relative to your program? Do you have a comprehensive Main Street work plan? Do you possess historic preservation ethic? Now, please understand, possessing historic preservation ethic doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be certified local government or that you have a historic preservation ordinance. The work that you do and the lens that you do your work through has an ethic of historic preservation. Do you have an active board of director and committee, an adequate operating budget, a program director, staff and volunteers? Do you maintain your reporting as we require monthly? Are you a current member of Main Street America? And are you in good standing with Mississippi Main Street? So after you've heard Thomas talk about the MOA that we have as a state organization, you can see how those standards are consistent across the board nationally and with the state. So, if you're complying, I hate the word compliance, but if you're doing the work that needs to be done to be in good standing with the state organization, and we're assisting you in doing that, your program evaluation is going to go so smoothly for the national accreditation. And I believe that's all that I have, and I will turn it over to Jeannie.
Thanks, Jennifer. Okay, guys. Well, as y'all know, we are kind of past time. So if you do need to hop off, know that this is recorded and we will send a link out and also have it on our YouTube page. So if you do need to leave, we certainly understand. This is the first time that we have done this via webinar. When we have our in-person Main Street approaches, they're usually a few hours long. So I think we underestimated how much that we had to go over. But thanks for hanging in there. It's a lot of really good information. And like we said, it will be recorded so you can go back to it. You can send it to your local board members and other people who would benefit from the training. So we hope that will be beneficial for you guys. As we wrap up, we are going to just talk a little bit about marketing and communications, both from the state program and your local program. First, as Thomas mentioned earlier in the webinar, your trainings. So I think we've talked a good bit about it, but just knowing continuing education is essential, not just for you, but also for your board members, your task teams, all of your volunteers. It's so important. So part of your program of your memorandum of agreement is agreeing to have a travel budget where you can go and you can get out of your community and in a non-COVID world, and you can go into another Main Street community and learn from their director, see what they have going on, and even steal some ideas and make them your own in your own community. So it's so important to be able to get out of your community and see what else is going on, and also to take a part of the network, which I believe is our strongest thing that we bring to our membership, is the network that comes with Mississippi Main Street of 50 plus communities. The wonderful thing about our trainings is we give you a lot of opportunities to get them in. And if your travel budget is small, you can plan to go to the trainings that are more in your region of the state, where you don't have to spend the night if you don't have that, ability. And then we are going to still offer kind of a hybrid of webinars and in-person trainings. So you should have plenty of opportunities to get these trainings throughout the year. And if for some reason a training lands on a date that doesn't work for you, send a representative, send your board president, send a board member that it pertains to whatever point of Main Street it is. Maybe they're in your promotions committee, send them to marketing training. Or the webinar that we're going to have in November. So just to go over this quickly, all of these dates coming up are on our website under Main Street Trainings. But just so you know, wrapping up this year, November 18th, we are having marketing training, which is just a specific focus on marketing within the promotion point. And we will have that via webinar. We wanted to have it on Laurel this year, but it just hasn't worked with COVID. But we will have that, and that will be a day long, kind of 9 to 3-ish webinar. We will have sign-up information going out. It's actually open, but we haven't set the agenda completely. So we will have that going out very soon for you to sign up for. And that's on November 18th, the Wednesday, November 18th. The 2021 dates, I'm just going to briefly go over, just because this is part of your MOA to know, like, okay, what am I supposed to go to? Because you don't have to go to everything. So right off the bat, January 28th and 29th is our Director's Retreat at Lake Teacata in Louisville. Will be our third year to go back to Lake Teacata. wonderful place to relax and to be casual and get to know each other. We do ask that every director attend. We think it's really important to start the year off this way and get to know your fellow Main Street directors. We kind of give an overview of the state of Mississippi Main Street. Our board president usually comes and welcomes everyone and kind of gives them a board perspective from our state leadership. So important. So January 28th and 29th, that's a Thursday and then a half day Friday. So please plan to join us. Also, because of we know COVID is not going to be over once it becomes 2021. We are asking that programs only send one representative. So ideally, your Main Street director would be the one. If it cannot be the Main Street director, then your board president or a board member, but only one, just so we make sure we're going to be socially distanced and just abide by those guidelines and be careful. And so we ask just one person per community come. So that's exciting. So please come to that. Your next opportunities, you can choose either the National Main Street Conference or Destination Downtown each year for your training fulfillment. The National Conference they have announced is going to be virtual on April 12th through the 14th. So that will be an easy one to be a part of. It was going to be in Boston, but now it will be virtual. But Destination Downtown will be in Mississippi. So we want to strongly encourage everyone to make sure they attend that. And it will be in Starkville just because we did have to postpone it this year. So that will be in September of next year. So please plan that. And then you can pick 2 quarterly trainings in the Main Street 4 Points. So again, just 2 of these. And if they need to be webinars, that's fine. So that's in the 4 Points. I'm not going to go over all the dates, but just 2 of the quarterly trainings. And then if you do miss out of all of those offerings, you still need to make up one. You can attend a partner training or event, and we have a number of those. In October 1st, actually, the MOA, the draft MOA went out to everybody, and you also got this exhibit of your training calendar. So you have this, and if you don't have it and can't find it back in your emails, I'm happy to send that as well, so you can see this again. And like I said, these training events are all on the website as well. So mark those dates, please. And then when you have your dates of your local events set for the new year, please send them to me and we make sure and get them on our calendar and want to promote the great things going on in your communities. Also, just on that note, regional meetings are something I know Jennifer likes to have around the state, and they're not an official training, but it's just a time for directors in a region to get together and talk about a specific topic that's of interest. And so last year, I know there was one in Baldwin and historic preservation and tax credits specifically. And so that was just a great opportunity for those directors in that area. So if you are interested in hosting something like that, let Jennifer know. And she does like to move those meetings around, but those are not official trainings. They're just continuing education and more opportunities for networking. And I think any of our directors can say the networking is probably one of the more fun things with Main Street. When people have to leave from time to time, they're always really sad to leave because we have such a fun group. We like to have fun. And so for those that are new to Main Street, just know we're a really fun group to be a part of. Okay, so on to our awards. Thanks, Thomas. This is the highlight of our year. Is where we recognize all of our members, our nationally accredited programs, our new members. We conduct official business for Mississippi Main Street, and of course, we announce our award winners. This year, we had our virtual annual awards, which I think went really well. It wasn't the same as being in person, where you have over 200 people eating lunch and celebrating together. So we're looking forward to being back together in 2021. The award applications will open. They are online. We don't take paper entries anymore. They're all online. It's a very simple online form to fill out. They will open in early February and they'll close in April. So you have about a 2-month window. And this is a good time of year as your events kind of wrap up and different things, this is a good time to start looking back and thinking about your projects and your events and different things over the last year and even the year before, because you can nominate things from the past 2 years and think about things that you want to put forward. The applications we've simplified them. You only have to write a little 150-word paragraph. And then you have to submit some great photos or a video. So the application process isn't hard. You can submit up to 6. So you can, submit 2 or 3 in one category, or you can submit 1 in each of the 4 points. You can submit up to 2 special awards, and those are for individuals. So we have, we will have the new application going out at the beginning of the year. But if you want to look at, past applications, we haven't changed the award categories much. So we're happy to share that with you if you want to like start brainstorming. You can also go on our website and look at this year's award winners, and you can kind of see like the types of projects and events, and that will help you, I think, get brainstorming as well. I do want to encourage people, you don't win every year. I mean, we have a lot of communities, and so the judging is always very competitive. And so please know, if you didn't win one year, please don't be discouraged. Try again the next year. And then if you had a really powerful award nomination, but it didn't win, know that sometimes categories are stacked, and we'll have 10 strong applicants in one award category. So don't be afraid to reapply for that same award that maybe didn't win, and know that the next year may be the year for it. You're also welcome to ask our staff for feedback. We take notes. We don't participate in the judging, but we are there to take notes and to move the slideshow forward. The judges are an impartial jury that each have expertise in one of the 4 points. And so we're happy though to share, some positive feedback and maybe help y'all as you hone your award application skills each year. Let's see. So the awards luncheon is scheduled right now for June 10th, 2021. If this is the year like you just don't have time to apply, please still plan to come, because as we said, this is our annual highlight, and we celebrate everybody, all of our members, regardless of whether you submitted for awards. And also when you come, you get inspired and you get encouraged and you get excited about the things going on in our state. So even if it's not your year, please come support your other communities. And you can even sit with some other directors at your table if you're just coming by yourself, but please be a part of that important day for all of us. Just so as you're setting budgets for the next year, know that individual seats are 50 and a table of 8 is 400. So you can just keep that in mind as you plan to attend the awards in 2021. We will most likely have a little like webinar with y'all, the directors, before awards applications open, to kind of give y'all some tips, or maybe it'll be a fireside chat conversation, something like that. So I'm not going to go into specifics, but all I will say, when you're planning to apply for awards, you want bright, compelling photographs, and you want to make sure they help tell your story. They need to correspond with your narrative, and they need to really help tell your story. And videos are great to do that as well. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about, as you have events and different things, or your projects are going on, get a photographer, spend a little money and get some quality photos, because it makes a difference. Of course, we love to celebrate the awards all year long. We spotlight the awards months after they happen. We also spotlight nominees. So it's a great time to be a part of. In addition to kind of that recognition, you see those beautiful awards. We've had them custom made by a Mississippi artist the last several years. She does a beautiful job using reclaimed historic wood and tin from old ceilings and historic buildings from our communities. It's just really special. So the award winner receives that. And then we also issue a press release with the winners. New this year, with our annual report, we featured our award winners. We will continue to do that every year. And so we have that nice magazine quality booklet that you can, have in your office or give to your award winners. So we have just several perks of just being part of the awards process. Okay, so now we're going to move on to marketing and communication. We were excited to have our new brand last year developed by Own Your Hill Marketing. This is a firm in Laurel, Mississippi, and Bethany Bird, the owner, will actually be our feature presenter on our marketing training. And she's going to kind of talk a little bit about our creative process of bringing us through rebranding for Mississippi Main Street. That's some of our swag that we got from that we had printed after she redeveloped it for us. We love our new brand. We hope you do too. And so please join us. We'll hear a little bit more about kind of our process of rebranding on November the 18th with Bethany, but that shows you some of our materials that we use. You can go to the next slide. So for communication and marketing, I'm going to talk about it from the state perspective, and then we'll kind of end with the local stuff. But the Mississippi Main Street website, msmainstreet.com, I hope it's a place that you go to and visit. For our local directors, probably the most important pages are your community profiles. So when you go to our communities in the tab, you should be able to find your name of your community, click on it, and you have your own unique page. If there's information that's outdated or you want to photo replaced or something or other, please let me know and we'll edit it. For some of you that may not have websites that are real active, this is a great thing to maybe give to somebody that tells a little bit about your Main Street program. And then the other place on the website is the directors area, and you scroll to the bottom of the website and you can log into that area. That's where you access the reports that Jen went over, and then also grants, resources, presentations, some things that should be helpful for you. So take some time to look through it, but those are probably the two areas that are most visited by our local program directors. If you have trouble logging in sometimes I have to reset your login for the report generator, please email me and I certainly can do that. The next is email communications. We all know we live in such a digital world. And so from Mississippi Main Street, directors received a director's digest of information each month that's got grants, upcoming events, partner information, lots of good things. And it's a big email, but you've got a month to digest it. And so those go out. And then the State of the Street is our public facing newsletter. That's pretty much quarterly. And that goes to all of our audiences. So Director's Digest is internal, State of the Street is external. And then for our social media, you can easily find us with MS Main Street on our 3 platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And then our common hashtags we use, sometimes we get asked from directors, what hashtag should I use? So these are some of the common ones we use. For your local program, you probably want to say your program name, Main Street. That would probably be a good hashtag for you, but please do join us in using these. We Are Main Street and Main Street Forward are commonly used by the National Center. And then MS Main Street and Main Street is Mississippi are kind of like ones that we like to use. And then finally on this page, ads. This is a marketing tool, another tool in your tool belt that you can use. We kind of offer signups for the year, and usually the statewide publications are the ones that garner a lot of interest for us as far as co-op ads to be a part of. You may advertise in local or regional publications, or your CVB may do that. But if you want to be part of maybe more of a statewide publication like the Mississippi Tour Guide or Mississippi Magazine, then you can sign up to be a part of those. And being a part of them, you get more bang for your buck. It's a lot cheaper if you're going in to participate with other communities. And then just from a branding standpoint, it shows the strength of our network when we have a map full of Main Street communities participating, or several events on one page, or whatever it is. So just keep in mind as you set your budgets, start putting some little money back into marketing and advertising, because it's so important to my computer just wigged out, to show what you're doing and to put yourself out there and to attract people to your community. Okay, so next slide. Main Street America, I just want to go over this briefly. We talked about it some, but that is part of your membership, is that we asked you to also be a member of Main Street America. And so that is when you're a member, of course, you get the ability to be nationally accredited. If for some reason you don't meet all of those criteria, you are still considered an affiliate program when the accreditation comes around. So you're either accredited or affiliate with Main Street America. So that's another kind of badge of honor. You see the 2020 accredited logo that everybody received, that was accredited this year. The website and member area for Main Street America, webinars and emails. Thomas, I see your mouse moving around. I don't know if you're like trying to do something, but the point for Mississippi. This is something that we asked everybody to be a part of. We were their first pilot program to be part of this. wonderful like email message board. And so there's the national one, but then there's one just for Mississippi Main Street directors. And so being a part of that is where we have continued discussions. We have our Facebook page as well, just for Main Street directors. But the point is where you can like look back and it logs past conversations. You can attach things. It's a more robust tool. And so if you're not already on it, please let me know and I can get you set up to get started for the point. And we want to make sure that you're on the point, signed up, so you can get those emails and you can easily answer them through your emails. And then also to be a part of the Facebook page that we have for Main Street directors as well. Our staff tries to make announcements on both platforms just because we know some people see the alert on Facebook before they check their email and vice versa. But those are some of the tools through Main Street America that we utilize. Okay. So local program communication and marketing. So your audiences, as I mentioned earlier, you do have, just like we do, you have an internal and external audience. And so you need to think about when you're crafting different emails that go out, who your audience is. And when you're thinking about your audience, you have to think of the with them factor, which is what's in it for me. And that's not me. That's actually, you're talking about it from your perspective of who you're communicating with, your audience. So what's in it for them? People want to be a part of something that benefits them. That's just kind of our human nature. And so whether it's like giving them community pride with being a part of an organization, or whether they enjoy wearing their volunteer t-shirt and saying they're with Main Street because it's the cool club in town, think about that, like what's in it for them, and sell it. So your audiences, your internal audiences are your board members, your committee members, your task teams. It's your sponsors, your investors, your city officials, local media, and maybe some of your other Main Street peers or colleagues. And so all internal audiences. Your external audiences are your community and the general public. So something to remember is you can control what you say about your organization, but you can't control what others say. So just make sure when you do recruit new board members, new committee members, that you're kind of doing what we're doing with y'all today, which is you go over what your organization is and what your mission is and what your vision is and what you stand for. And when they sign on, they're signing on to be a part of that. And so everyone that's part of your organization needs to be able to talk about Main Street, needs to be able to kind of develop an elevator speech to talk about why they're involved in Main Street, and they need to be able to be representatives for you. So think about that. And then when you communicate externally, everyone's saying that same message about what Main Street is and what all the good you're doing. Integrated media. So that little graphic there just shows you how many things we're involved with these days. I mean, it's really kind of mind-boggling. And a lot of times, if you're like me after work, you just want to shut it all off because it really can be overwhelming. But you've got all of your emails, and then you've got your social stuff, and then you've got phone calls coming in and emails coming in, and then you have people coming in your doors. And so we're in an age of integrated media where it's not like, a long time ago when the newspaper was like the main, way of getting the word out. It's just not how it is. And so now you have to think about what you're communicating and how you're communicating across multiple channels. And, are you sending things out through your social channels together, or are you, kind of sending them out and targeting each one individually? When you do that, it's time consuming. And so I know some of our programs have kind of communicated people on their staff, like Dalton from Tupelo Zone today, that help with that. Some people have someone on their promotions committee that helps with some of that. Some of our Main Street directors are really good at the communication part. And so you just kind of need to know your skills and what you enjoy doing and what you're really good at, and maybe decide what's best delegating and maybe spending some money to delegate to someone to handle, and what you yourself can do, because marketing is just 24/7 now. Creating a marketing plan for your budget, because we're, getting close to time. I'm not going to go through steps, but please come November 18th on the webinar, and we are going to talk about kind of the strategy behind developing a marketing plan, and why it's important to have a marketing budget. So that'll be a teaser for November 18th, and I will not walk through those steps right now. Your website. So if you have a website, please keep it updated. When people Google you and you go to their website and there's events from 2 years ago, you've lost them. So if you have a website that it's hard to keep updated, I would recommend letting it be a shell, having information on there that points them to maybe your social, that you keep updated all the time, maybe your contact information. Maybe you list kind of your feature events, but you don't put dates. If you can't keep it updated, think about like scaling back and just having maybe a shell of a website that gives a little bit more like information for where to go. Most of our programs do an awesome job keeping their Facebook pages updated. Some of our Facebook pages are a lot more updated than our website. So just think about that. And so, yeah, just take some time and think about like what you have out there and is it updated, and do I need to spend a little bit of time, to keep it up. And then of course your socials. I think a few years ago there was this pressure to like join every new social media channel, and that's just not realistic. Stick with the things that you're good at, that you enjoy doing, and really 2, 3 at the most, I would say, to put out there. There's just not enough time in the day to have all these different, social media channels. So if Facebook is your main thing, go. If you love Instagram, go. I've been experimenting with, having Instagram and Facebook post at the same time. You still have to go in and edit kind of who you're tagging and things. But anyway, think about what you enjoy doing. And again, if it's not your jam, spend a little bit of money and let somebody do it for you. That's kind of that in a nutshell. I'm going to end with one little thing. Don't forget to toot your own horn. And part of tooting your own horn, yes, is posting on your social, is, keeping that communication going, is having that marketing plan where you see, this is what I do this week, this is what I do this month, seeing that big plan ahead of time. But I also want to just take a minute and just talk to you about working with your media, because you can preach about what you do all the time, but when somebody else is really acknowledging like the awesome things that you're doing, that's something. So make your local reporter your friend. Talk to them. They should be on speed dial in your phone. Take that time to massage that relationship, and maybe they will start asking you to contribute information. So take that time to develop that relationship. If you're new to like the press release world, I'd be happy to provide a template and kind of work with you with that. Don't underestimate the importance of still traditional media and the newspaper, and all of our newspapers are digital now. So think about that. Also, who is your Main Street spokesperson? Most of the time it's you, but if you're not comfortable, is it your board president? When you're called on to give a statement or to be interviewed, you need to be ready. So is it you? Is it a board member? Who is your Main Street spokesperson? Also be careful, don't send irrelevant news too much. I mean, you don't want to send press releases all throughout the day. You want to be crafty in what you're sending out and make sure it's important, and then make sure it's also going to your right audience. So all of that is so important. We could go on and on. There's crisis communication. There's so much things. But very quickly, tracking your marketing, your media coverage, your analytics, your insights is really important. I know Tupelo has done this, and if Dalton doesn't care, I know they stopped sending their weekly newsletter because they looked at their insights and they weren't getting the response that they wanted, and it didn't merit the work that went into it. So check your analytics, your insights. Most of all the tools we use now have those readily available. So check like what's working and what's not. And then, shift and just as Jim was talking about, you evaluate your work plans, you evaluate, your marketing communication plan as well. So tweak what's not working, and track what you're doing. So make sure you're giving out consistent messages. Very quickly, just don't get into local politics. Be the peacemaker who brings everyone to the table. Be really careful with that your face is not a political message, that you're being the one that's bringing people to the table, and you're the education and informer. Promote your organization. Make sure the people that are part of your organization can promote it as well. Everyone should know your mission and vision. And then, of course, with my trombone here, toot your own horn. So promote your good news. Your stakeholders need to know the program that is positively changing the community, so they will continue to support your organization and mission. Sometimes, as Jim was saying, that's sending your reinvestment statistics. Sometimes it's cataloging all of the stories you've told on social media and showing how many projects and things and events have been developed. So keep track and toot that own horn. And we're so excited to be on this journey with each of you.
All right, everybody, that concludes today's Main Street Approach training. We want to thank everybody for being with us today and taking the time. It did take a little bit longer than we anticipated. So that's something that we'll take into consideration for next time. But I guess the last thing I want to leave everybody with is just that our staff is here to serve as a resource for our Main Street programs. If you have any questions or need any help, really about anything, feel free to reach out to myself or Jennifer or Jeannie. Our contact information is readily available on our website. So look us up, give us a call, send us an email, whatever the case may be. Do not, let this information overwhelm you. If you need follow-up, tutorials or information, just know that our staff exists. Really, our purpose for being is to serve as a resource for our local Main Street programs. So with that, we will, say again, thanks for joining us, and we'll look forward to hearing from you. I hope you all have a wonderful day.